Welcome to my Backbends series. We will be working over the course of several weeks looking at alignment of backbends and then how to get into the various different backbends that there are throughout this series. So I'd like to start this one with, first of all, what is a backbend and how do we achieve good alignment in a backbend? So a lot of people misunderstand a backbend and they think that it's about, as far as we can lean back, right? But there's a really big difference between leaning back and actually bending the spine. And so when we're leaning back, if my arm is my spine, when we're leaning back, we're just tilting backwards. Whereas if we're in a backbend, we're actually like letting the spine lift and bend, right? And so that's what we'll be working on. How do we achieve that bend? And there's two bends in our spine. There's the lower bend and the upper bend. And primarily we utilize the upper bend to accentuate the lower bend. But in any case, in order to achieve this bend, essentially what we're doing is lengthening out the spine to its maximum capacity, right? So it's not a matter of lifting up to the sky, it's a matter of as we lift, we open. So, as I said, we are looking at lengthening the spine to its capacity in order to achieve this bend. In order to do this, we need to have proper alignment with our whole body, starting with our feet. So, as I said, we don't want to just lean back in a back bend. We want to lengthen up and back into a back bend. And so in order to do this, we need to lengthen our spine out, which means we have to create optimal body positioning for that. This means hip distance apart with our feet. So what does hip distance apart with our feet mean? Hip distance apart means 2 fists put together in between your heels. 2 fists in between your heels is hip distance apart. Why is this hip distance apart? Because you're gonna be like, okay, well, Amy, this isn't as wide as what my hips are. My hips are this wide. I get it, because so are mine. Hip distance apart is where your hip joints are. So if I line my 2 fists with the seam of my pants, hopefully the seam of your pants is up the middle, not off to the side. But if we line it up in the middle, then where the outside, this is the center of my one hip joint, this is the center of my other hip joint. So this is what we mean by hip distance apart, where the center of our hip joint is. And we want to have our feet hip distance apart and parallel so that our hips are open and they allow our spine to drop between. So this is the tailbone part of our spine. We want to be able to lengthen that bottom part of the tailbone downward toward the earth so that as we rise upward, the spine can lengthen and open to its fullest capacity. So we always want to start off feet are hip distance apart and parallel. 2 fists are between our ankles. This means now my knees are over my ankles, my hips are over my ankles. This allows me to root my feet into the earth and support my hips so that they anchor down, allowing the space for my spine to drop between my hip joints. So as I root into my feet, right, I'm going to lift my toes and spread them wide. That's going to get my feet actively rooting into the earth. I want to start to engage my quads, right? So I want that quad muscle to contract and lift up. As I do that, my hips will start to pull forward a bit. This is engaging that lower bend, if you will, that happens in this low part of the lumbar spine, right? So right here, as I root, my feet are hip distance apart and even. I'm lifting my toes, spreading them, letting my feet root in. And now my thighs, I'm going to engage those. I'm going to lift my quads and pull them up. So as I do that, my hips now come forward a little bit. As my hips come forward, this low part of my spine comes into a lower bend as my tailbone drops down between my hips. This should feel very solid and stable. This is allowing your spine to say, I feel secure and now I can open up. This brings us into the next part. And as you'll see, this is just mountain pose, but mountain pose is a back bend, right? So as I have my feet hip distance apart and parallel, my toes are lifted and spread, I'm actively rooting into my feet, I'm engaging my thighs, pulling my hips forward. Now I want to engage my shoulders. This is the top part of the bend. So I lift my shoulders, draw my shoulder blades in toward my spine and pull them down. As you can see, this rib cage lifted. This is the back bend. And if I have my arms extended out, palms facing up, I'm in a mountain pose. Reaching up through the crown of my head as my cervical spine continues upward and back. So that as I inhale, I lengthen up, but I lengthen up and I accentuate that bend. So I lengthen up and back. And as I exhale, I root down deeper, solidifying this so I can rise up bigger, right? So as you can see in mountain pose is a back bend. If I bring this to the wall now, this will help me work on this a little bit more. The wall helps give us reminders of keeping our hips forward and our shoulders open. So this is where I like to start with back bends. It's a nice secure place because I have the wall here to support me. And I can use it as a guide. So I don't have my toes quite up to the wall. I have them maybe about, we'll do metric, so maybe about 3 or 4 centimeters away from the wall. My feet are hip distanced apart and parallel, so 2 fists are between my ankles. I root into my feet. As I root into my feet, so I lift my toes and spread them. Then I'm going to engage my thighs. As I do that, my pelvis comes in toward the wall. So I'm actually going to be pressing this lower part of my abdomen into the wall to help guide this back bend and secure the position. You can use any arm variation of your choice. Arms out to the sides or up. I like cactus arms when I'm at the wall. So now I want to lift my shoulders with my inhale. As I exhale, draw my shoulder blades in toward each other, pull them down my spine. Now you can see that nice big back bend that I talked about. And all I've done is draw my shoulder blades in toward each other and pull them down. I want to continue to reach up through the crown of my head so I have a gentle tuck of my chin. I'm not lifting up with my chin, that's just dropping my head back. I'm straightening my neck by doing that. I want to have a gentle tuck of my chin and I'm reaching up through the crown of my head. My gaze is set upward. So as I breathe, I inhale, I lengthen up, and as I exhale, I root down. When you're ready to come out, you inhale, lengthen up and toward the wall, and then exhale, making your way away from the wall. So this is a great place to start your back bends and really start to learn that alignment that your body should have to support your spine to open and grow. Feet are hip distanced apart and parallel. Thighs are over your hips, so you're not leaning back, but rather pulling forward. Rib cage is lifted as we draw our shoulder blades in and pull down. Gentle tuck of the chin, reaching up through the crown of your head. For our next segment, we will continue on with this and adapt this into a camel posture. Have a great day.